So today we are going to talk about a book that has been recently turned into a movie, and this book was, for some reason, controversial when it comes to the bipartisan uh, political situation we have in this country. The fact of the matter is, whatever your opinion about the book was, and whatever your opinion about the movie is, the fact is, I don't think that anybody is right or wrong. I know that in political discussions, it's turned more like a blood sport, and somebody has to be the winner. But that's not the case at all with this. What do you think?
I agree to some extent. I don't think there is a clear cut right or wrong, but I will say I definitely have some issues. I have not read the book, but I definitely have some issues with the movie that I just watched.
Right. So let's go ahead and talk about it, right?
Yes,
And with that, we start the show. Shall we start the show?
yes. Let's get started.
This is Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast, a binge watcher's guide to streaming movies, TV series, and stuff. Here are your hosts, Graham and Jocelyn.
Right, so today we are talking about the movie Hillbilly Elegy, which, as we mentioned, was originally a book by J.D. Vance, and director Ron Howard made a tremendous hoopla on Netflix about making this movie, and he finally came out, did it, and I say it worked out, right? Jojo, if you ask me, what did I think about this movie? What I will tell you is, well, I didn't hate it. What about you?
Um, I hated it.
Did you? Did you? This is funny. All right,
I
so
did. I did.
let's go into it, man, because it's ooh. Okay, Jojo, the floor is yours.
Okay.
The floor is yours, Jojo. Do your thing.
Do my thing.
Yes.
So this movie is about. It's based on a book, as you said, written by someone named J.D. Vance. It is supposed to be, and I'm actually just reading this off the Wikipedia site because I'm sort of too angry to make a coherent statement. But the film is supposed to be a modern exploration of the American dream through three generations of the Vances, which is a family from the Appalachian area of America. Most notably, it focuses on the protagonist, our hero, J.D. Vance, and his relationship with his mother, who is troubled, and his relationship with his grandmother, which I think you could also qualify as troubled, and his story of his version of the American dream. I have a lot of problems with the movie, as you said, and I think I said earlier. I have not read it. It has a sort of a stereotypical confirmation that all you need to do to make it is to work really hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that is dangerous rhetoric in a kind of world that we live in now. Its portrayal of poor people, because as I've said many times, and as we've discussed in person and on the podcast, I grew up very poor. Its portrayal of poor white America is a rich person's, a upper middle class person's portrayal of what they think it's like. And this is nothing like what it's like. There are a few things that may touch on the way things are, and I'm going to give that to the actors that are involved as opposed to the story. But this is trite. This is offensive. This is something that was maybe should have in the hands of a different filmmaker. Maybe it could have been a little bit more than trite. But it's so bad it makes me want to write a book. So I'm actually glad I watched it, because otherwise I wouldn't have watched it, and I wouldn't have known that this existed, at this view of rural America and the whites in it existed, because I'm not kidding. It makes me want to write a book to say, this is how it actually is.
Talk to me about some of your major issues with the portrayal in itself.
The story itself is very choppy. It's very almost schizophrenic. Some of the dialogue is unbelievably bad. Some of the lines. The whole point of the story seems to be of a white male savior. You have the story of Mama, which we don't really get into what's going on with her and her background. It's touched on a little bit, but it's really not explained to the extent that it needs to be, so you understand how strong of a character she is and what she went through for this family. You have Bev, who, again, her story is totally glossed over. You have Lindsay, the sister to the main protagonist, JD, who is just as smart and perhaps more resilient than JD. But of course, she can't get out because she's a woman. And so you have the whole, again, to me, it feels very, very misogynist. It feels very, well, we're going to put everything we can into what we can to get the boy out. We'll get the boy out. And I'm not saying that isn't reality. I mean, honestly, statistically, he is the one that could get out. Being a white male, he can enlist in the Marines and get his college paid for. He can do, things that are never available to women in the world today. But all of that being glossed over in the movie is very much to me, a spit in the eye as to what these women actually did for him so that he could, quote unquote, get out. It's very much told in the sense of him being this wonderful, marvelous person that got out, and he did all of this, and the rest of them were either too coarse or too addicted or too female to get out, and it to hold him up to these standards when he's essentially just a dull white boy. To me, this feeds into the very dangerous political climate there is in the world right now to say, well, that's all poor people need. Anybody, black, brown, white, whatever. You just need to do this yourself because you're the American dream is obviously well within your reach. All you have to do is try. There were instances of him. There's an instance where he buys gas for his car, and his card declines. And he seems shocked by this, and he pulls out another card. And I can assure you that when you're poor, you know exactly how much you have in your account. You know exactly how much you have left on each credit card. You are going to say, put $5 on this card. Here's $2 in change. Here is a $5. Here is that. That's a kind of intelligence in itself. But you know these sorts of things, and for him to be surprised, then when there's a point where, again, with money, where they go to rehab, he manages to bully a female into getting his mother a bed. And, he ends up having to put $3,000 down for her to be able to stay. And he just magically has this $3,000 on these 25 credit cards he has in his wallet. If he had $3,000 on credit cards, then this whole issue of, oh, I have to have this job and I have to have this interview and I have to do this and I have to do that. I mean, the whole thing just falls through. If you magically have $3,000 on a credit card, you aren't poor. You are not poor. If you have $3,000 that you can put on a credit card, you are not poor. You just aren't.
God, yeah. So where's that all that credit come from?
Exactly. Where did he get all these credit cards in 2011 2011? Where did he get? This is right after the recession. He says he's been working 3 jobs. No, and where did he get 25? Just on the basis of being a white man, I guess. So I have issues with that. I have issues with so many things like. So the character of Mama and Pawpaw don't live together. Okay, so how are they making that? How do they have 2 houses? If you're poor, how do you have 2 houses? Because if this is, so it takes place in the 90s, she wouldn't have worked. She wouldn't have Social Security. So we're just going to say his Social Security is paying for 2 houses for the 2 of them? No. Maybe they don't live together, but they're not going to have 2 houses. There's no way you could pay for the rent or own 2 houses if you are poor. It's ridiculous. They would all be living together in one house together. And the only time that Bev would be getting out of the house, the mother character, would be when she was with another man. And they don't, and, she has her own house too for a while. Yeah, it's just mind-bogglingly inaccurate to me. Like it's a rich person's idea of how poor people live.
I remember the first person who talked to me about this book, Jojo, was someone we know. I think the way that he surmised the book was, this book sort of explains the origins of Trumpism. Do you remember when I was telling you we have to watch this movie? That's what I was thinking about, because I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to view this, because I would have liked to read the book.
Yes.
But it seems to me, again, that the different opinions regarding this book are based on white, male, Christian, rich people looking from the outside and thinking that they understood perfectly everything that J.D. Vance attempted to say in this book. And it seems to me that you, based on your opinion and your reaction having seen the movie, it might well be as offensive as it is to you, as you have manifested that it is to you, as anybody who grew up not necessarily poor, but in a white working class family. And so I am incredibly appreciative of that, of your sincerity, because I too am looking at this entire situation from the outside. Have I been poor? Yes. But I'm a poor man growing up in outside of the United States. So my experience is definitely not the same. And to be madly honest with you, any poor person in the United States is at least 20 times richer than anybody growing up in a third world country.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
There's no question about that. Absolutely. And has access to much more resources and opportunity. Absolutely. I just think that this kind of movie has a push of a stereotype in America, in the United States, that is very. They're screaming at each other all the time. It's such a stereotype. There's foul language used all the time. It's such a stereotype. Everybody's smoking, There's no money for pills, but they have money for cigarettes, that kind of thing. And I I just, the veneer and the gloss that is put on this is so much of someone who's never experienced it from the inside. It's just so, it's the same way that I will never understand fully I will never understand the Black experience in the United States. I won't, because I'm not Black, I'm white. And I'm not saying that this is some sort of an elite class that nobody can ever possibly understand. That's not what I'm trying to say. This is so offensive to me because it is just so stereotypical, so everything that is wrong with the way that people look at poor people. It's dehumanizing. It is. I can't describe to you, I don't think, how angry this movie made me. There is a review that I would really like to recommend from a woman who is an author, and her name is Allison Stein. And she not only grew up in Appalachia, she still lives there. And she has written an amazing review about this book she wrote it for Salon, that is everything that I am very poorly trying to say. And she is brilliant in her review of this movie and her explanation of why it's hurtful, and her explanation of why this is not something that should have been made the way it was made. And I cannot stress enough that if you have the ability to read her review, that you read it. Her name is Allison Stein. The review is for Salon. If you Google it, you can find it. When I was researching this movie too, I saw that critics hated it. And I saw that the people who've watched it generally love it. Like the people who've left reviews on like Google for it. It's got so many 5-star reviews. And I thought about that, and I thought that so many of the people who are leaving those reviews, and I didn't read all of the reviews, so I'm not going to say that all of them are, but so many of the people who are leaving those reviews are people who have access to broadband internet, who have access to Netflix, who are able to do all of these things and have never experienced this from the inside out, have never experienced this life, have never experienced what it is to be poor. And I think that the people who truly love this movie are the people who this is the way they've already seen poor people, and it's just confirmation for them as to what they needed to see. That it's okay. So this is a great gritty view of poor America, and it is true that all you need is a good strong family behind you, a good strong Christian family behind you, and you will overcome. And as long as they sacrifice everything for you and you sacrifice everything you can, you're going to make it and make it good. And again, I know that the author is not saying that he achieved some wonderful, marvelous thing or won the Nobel Prize or anything like that. But I think even just the act of quote unquote getting out and of becoming middle class, he may as well have. Because that's honestly statistically the what could have happened. Because if you're born poor, you are going to stay poor. I mean, in America, this is a really side rant here, but I'm going to go on this rant anyway.
Go on, Jojo. Go on. This is the most passionate I've seen you make a case, and I can only imagine a grand hall of justice where you have the floor to yourself. And again, I'm not joking, seriously. I'm loving it because I struggled a lot to find ways to talk about this movie that it shouldn't be offensive. You see what I mean? Because again, much in the same way that I hate it when people start talking about this is what black people should do, this is what brown people should do, this is how, this is the prescription for poor people, poor minority people to get ahead. Look at this. This is what the American dream is. And by the way, politicians do a lot of that shit too.
Yes, they do. Yes,
right?
they do.
I for once always had a grudge with Obama about this bullshit of the American dream. Because while yes, his story is a version of the American dreams, there were a lot of things that worked for Obama that wouldn't have worked for, I don't know, little Ray Ray. Let us not forget that Obama ended up being been finished raising by his grandparents, but there were, two white grandparents raising a biracial kid in a pretty progressive state, by the way,
Yes.
called Hawaii.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I don't know, and I hope people don't misunderstand what I'm saying here.
It's statistically, as you said, I feel like there are things that are a perfect storm, a perfect recipe for success. And
right.
I feel that he very much had that. And I'm not saying I don't believe that I mean, of course you have to work for things. I don't believe that things are just handed to you. You have to have a drive. You have to have gumption. But at the same time, there has to be this row of dominoes behind you that fall perfectly, or it's not going to happen. That's the way life works. Life isn't fair, okay? It's not fair.
Simple as that.
And if Obama had the misfortune of being born a girl, it never would have happened.
Right.
He would have never been president. Yeah. He wouldn't have.
So now you can't, I know that I interrupted you because you were going somewhere with your argument, and I'm sorry that I just entered to say this because, like I said, your passion talking about this is palpable, and I feel like you definitely have the wherewithal that I don't have to seriously talk about this, because again, like I said, I know you have been very open about the way you grew up, but at the same time, that's not the picture that I get, or the picture that was portrayed in this movie is not what I get from your upbringing, and of course, from Appalachia or anything like that.
No, and that certainly makes a difference.
But you have never had a problem with putting yourself in being raised in a poor, white, working class family. But on the other hand, it wasn't, there were uneducated people that smoked and, drank moonshine and shit,
Yeah.
Your father, had he had the opportunity to, I don't know, find himself in California, with what he knew, it would have been probably a completely different outset.
Yes. Yes.
Your mother, I gather, was an incredibly smart woman, is an incredibly smart woman, and, sort of like kept things glued together in a way that is almost heroic, And while we see some of these characters here, but this is pretty pathetic of a display to tell the story of the American dream. And again, my hope is that that's not really what the book is about. But again, we have to get to that, don't we?
Yes, we'll have to read the book. I hope that the book is deeper. And I think I'm angry too at this movie because of sort of the pedigree of Ron Howard and Glenn Close and Amy Adams, who I am very disappointed in the idea that they would be behind and put their star power and their names and their money and the production into something like this. Whatever it started out as with the book, the end product is it's a very watchable movie. I will say that for it. It's certainly watchable. I can't call it entertaining because it's too offensive to me to call it entertaining. It's so pitch wrong. It's so tone deaf. It's so, again, it is someone else's view of what it is to be poor. And the idea that this was believed and by studios and believed by the actors that were in it and the directors and the producers is so disheartening to me that anybody would be like, yeah, we're going to put this out as a serious movie, a serious big budget movie. We're going to release it and put our names to it is very disheartening to me. My little side rant that I was going to do, I'm still going to do it.
Yeah, by all means.
I have very crooked teeth. And if you're white and you have very crooked teeth, everybody immediately knows that you grew up poor. And Hollywood very much pushes along the stereotype because what is one of the first things that happens to actors and actresses when they come to Hollywood is they fix their teeth. The teeth become straight, they become white, they become perfect smiles. You know, they put the caps on and everything like that. This is because in America, there is no access to dental care unless you have the money to pay for it. If you live in a rural area, you don't have fluoride in your water because you have well water. And so I was very fortunate in that my father was worried about teeth. And he paid once a year for me to have my teeth checked and to make sure that they were cleaned and things like that. So there was never any money for braces or orthodontics or anything like that. But once a year, I was very fortunate in that because my father did not want, it wasn't a cosmetic thing. It was very simply, I don't want you to go through the pain that I went through when I was your age of infected teeth and that sort of thing. So with my father, that being a concern of his, there might not have been money for toothpaste, but you can use baking soda for toothpaste. You can also use salt. It doesn't taste good, but it does do the job. But the thing is that if he hadn't had that concern, I probably wouldn't even have teeth in my mouth because, again, there was I grew up with well water, so no fluoride. If he hadn't been concerned with that, if he had not made that a priority, then that wouldn't have happened. And this is a sign to other whites when they see you smile and you have bad teeth, or you have crooked teeth. Oh, you grew up poor, or oh, you grew up lower middle class. It is a thing. Teeth are a thing. And I know that is so weird and strange to say. And possibly maybe for people who are upper middle class to even realize that they're making that in their brain, but they are. When they see it, the smile, and they see bad teeth, they immediately go, oh, poor. And I know this because I have known people who, in order to fit in, have had their teeth corrected. And it is a way to advance in the white world. Get your teeth fixed. So I know this is a strange rant and it's a weird one, but I think in the sense of even in this movie, there is a point where the mom, Bev, screams out of the window to the character of Ray towards the end of the movie, you don't even have all of your teeth. And that is a point of pride to her to say, I've still got my teeth. I'm better than you. I may be poor, but I am better than you because I still have my teeth.
See, like this is one thing that happened, and all I could see was the entire argument, the entire situation But I could not, for the life of me, obviously, not have gotten that there, because again, this is something that I don't know of. But again, you are sending me to school right here, Jojo. Come on, yeah.
Class is in session. But
Yes, ma'am.
But so I when she said that line in the movie, I cringed. But it also was one of the few lines that rang true to me, because that is an insult that would have genuinely been thrown. And so that's how I got on my little tooth rant here. But it is something that marks you as poor. So it's something that even if you are ever able to, get an education or something like that, if you smile and your teeth aren't perfectly white or your teeth aren't perfectly straight, there is always going to be, whether it's conscious on the other person's part or not, there is always going to be in their mind, this person didn't come from the same class as I did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Just another way that humans are horrible to each other.
Yeah. But yes, I think this is a man trying to tell a background story without a hero in it. That's what the title tells me. If we are parting from Elegy. But let's talk about the characters that somehow were looked over. I'm particularly offended that they didn't dedicate a good amount of time telling me what was Mama's life like.
Yes.
Papa, I don't know that I wanted to hear much of it, because he was a drunk and he was an abusive drunk.
Yes.
But this is the woman that kept that house together, that glued everything together.
Yes.
This is a woman that we discover that JD didn't know the whole story, but I'm pretty sure that if Bev, JD's mother, JD and Lindsay's mother, made it to nursing school and even graduated, obtained her license as a nurse, I'm sure that it was because Mama was there.
Yes.
Yes. Because, like I said, there is no indication that anything good happened to that family if it weren't for Mama.
Exactly.
So what happened there? How is it that this story is not told in greater detail?
Yes.
George.
Yes. I wish that if it was going to be told, it should have been told through her eyes, or more about her, because she was obviously a force of nature in real life. She had to be.
And JD didn't seem to have enough information to paint the correct picture of her. Am I right?
I agree with you 100%. From the view we have of her, his mother, and his sister, I very much got the feeling, fuck you, I got mine. When it came right down to it. I'm not talking about that he actually said that or was actually like that, but when it came down to the nitty-gritty of it was fuck you, I got mine.
And even in the conclusion of the bio at the end, it was pretty much that. Yeah, JD lives in Ohio with the beautiful Indian wife that he got himself and 2 beautiful biracial children. They are the perfect picture of the American dream. Mm-hmm. And it seems almost as if the message here is, once you get the fuck out, you can only look at these people you left behind as a charity case.
Yes. Yes.
They become a charity case to you, not your brother, your sister, your people. But again, This is the reason why I'm saying I don't know that this is what this man set out to do
Right.
with this book, because when he start, the narration is, I tell people that I'm from Ohio, but where most I feel at home is here in Jackson, Kentucky.
Yes. And then
This is where my people. He talks about them as his people.
and then we never see
How
Kentucky again
Right. Right.
in the movie. I don't know about the book, but in the movie we never see Kentucky again.
Yes. But, one thing I have to say about this is Hollywood is out of his damn mind if they're going to tell me that after all the times that Glenn Close has been passed on for an Oscar, this is the one that is going to get her the Oscar. That is absolute fucking bullshit.
I
I said. No.
I agree. I just I feel like the very cynical side of me feels like Amy Adams and Glenn Close took these roles because they saw Oscar. And that I hope that wasn't the case. But I hope neither one of them wins for it because it's not there.
Right, but again, we're talking about Hollywood that loves a white savior story,
Yes.
white male savior story,
Yes.
and loves the whole, I was born really poor, but I pulled myself, this is it. Hollywood, here's the thing. American conservatives love to think as Hollywood as a liberal fucking Sodom and Gomorrah, but it isn't.
It is not.
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 This is the same fucking Hollywood that, wrote and purported Gone with the Wind. Okay, this is the same Hollywood that wrote and filmed and promoted The Birth of a Nation, that fucking glorifies the KKK. That hasn't changed. Hollywood is not fucking liberal. So forget about this bullshit. This is why this kind of offensive shit is still being done. This is why when it comes down time to vote for Oscar nominations, this is what you're going to get. All of the people who were in this absolutely outrageous depiction of people from this country, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a bunch of Oscar nominations and a lot of people saying, yo, this was great. This was absolutely great.
Yep.
But watch this movie if you want to. And I think when Jojo and I texted back and forth about it, my answer was, I didn't hate it.
That was your answer. And I hadn't watched it yet, so.
And the reason I said that, Jojo, is because you mentioned something during a few minutes ago about that the movie wasn't entertaining. There was nothing entertaining about it. And I found myself struggling to find anything entertaining. The idea that a sad movie cannot be entertaining is a myth. That's bullshit.
No, that's true.
You don't have to have a box of napkins with you the entire time you're watching a sad movie.
Right.
But the fact is, there was a huge portion of this movie that was incredibly tiring. Bev's character deserves more sympathy than what the movie made her out to be.
Yeah.
I read an article out there that says why you should not feel sympathetic. Why is it okay to not feel sympathetic for Bev's Amy Adams' character? I think that's absolute fucking bullshit. I think she deserves more sympathy than that. Because she may have ended up being an addict, an absolute fuck up. But she didn't ask for none of the shit that happened to her as a child, that she was witness to as a child. And it takes an extraordinary spirit for a person not to grow up to be an absolute fuck up, having been through the shit that this woman as a girl witnessed happening around her. You know,
I kind of feel that the character of Bev is a very flat interpretation from a very young person who never saw her as anything other than a mother, and a screw-up mother at that.
yeah, and actually said it. You're a shitty
Yes,
mother.
yes. And
Yeah.
I don't think it, from the perspective of someone who never saw her as anything else. I think as children, we don't really see our parents as anything other than parents. They aren't humans with their own needs, wants, desires, passions, hurts. They're just parents. That is the way we are wired to be. Otherwise, I don't think we'd ever grow up. I mean, in the sense of feeling that much emotion from such a young age and that much knowledge from a young age, I feel like our heads would just explode from pain. But I don't think that the character of Bev is ever seen from a mature angle, from someone who can be sympathetic and say, the reason she is the way she is because of this, not because she's a shitty person. She's not a
Right.
shitty mom because she's a shitty person. She's dealing with some shitty things, and maybe she's not doing it the quote unquote right way, but she's doing what she can. She's doing the best she can with what she has. That is.
And there was a moment.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. There was a moment where JD paints that picture, but only to get the benefit of getting her in that institution.
Yes.
And to a certain extent, he almost felt like he was lying.
Yes.
Because right after that, he walked out and the sister had to tell him, you don't know shit.
Yes.
Because he was going on to, telling the sister, well, why do you keep defending her?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And this is a personal story that I'm going to take the liberty of telling, and I don't even know how my wife is going to feel about that. But the reason I'm saying this is because, again, part of the things that I see that happens when kids grow up in abusive homes, especially when one of the parents has been abusive to the other parent, is that the older child sort of like shield the younger siblings from seeing all of that. And it is possible, it is absolutely possible that the younger siblings may have grown up with a completely different and perfect idea of the family they grew up with.
Yes.
But that is not always the case. And I say that because my wife grew up with a father that was abusive to her mother. And her younger brother, John, she always protected John from witnessing all of that. And whatever John knows today, he knows it because he has gotten old enough to sort of put two and two together. But if he's not an absolute fuck up today, it is because he had a big sister that protected him from seeing some shit.
Yeah.
And this is why probably Lindsay never left town. This is why we can see her being a good mom, a good wife, a utile individual to the little society where she lives. But she also had the same fucking potentials to make it big.
Yeah.
And this is what no one is telling you in this story.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, I think it's because she decided she was going to be the protector for both the little brother and also the mother because Mama was gone,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think the characters that were overlooked here deserve better than that.
I agree.
And
I agree that the character of Lindsay Vance, the sister, is someone whose story is much more interesting than JD's, because she was probably smarter than him, honestly, to be able to do all the things that she did.
yes,
She was probably more resourceful than him. She was certainly stronger than him. And she is, quote unquote, left behind because she made the sacrifices for him. And I actually very much enjoyed the performance of Haley Bennett as Lindsay. She is the only one that rang true to me in this whole thing.
yes. So with that said, like I said, the cast is not huge. The cast is not huge, so we don't have a lot to talk about the cast. So I think Amy Adams portrayed an incredibly one-dimensional character. So much so that it creates a certain level of lack of sympathy for her. And if you've never dealt with folks with addiction, you would think that's what it's all about, and that is not. So, yeah, we can expect her to be nominated for some shit because, like I said, that's Hollywood for you. But in my view, this was, again, an incredibly one-dimensional character. What do you say, George?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree, and I said it earlier, but I'm very disappointed that they, one, were okay with this being released the way it is, and two, are very strongly defending it right now. That's another issue I have with that. Amy Adams and Glenn Close are both very much defensive of the criticism that they're receiving, and I am very disappointed in that, because it's one thing to have something put out and go, oh, that didn't turn out the way I wanted. It's another thing to put something out that is so unbelievably offensive and go, but it was great. It was wonderful. It was marvelous. Because I had more respect for them as human beings to understand more of the plight of the human condition, even if you haven't experienced it. But it's apparent to me now that they do not.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I think for the second time in a row, we're going to end up saying this. The only thing that made you want to see what became of the older character is because of the absolutely majestic portrayal that the young actor did of the main character. This kid's name is Owen Ashtalos, and I think he was great, Jojo.
He was, yeah. He was good at it. He did what he could with what he had, and he was good. I agree.
Right. So who else caught your attention? Gabriel Basso as the grown-up J.D. Vance.
He was just a dude. I mean, the character was just a guy. I didn't really get any real sense of pathos from him or real understanding for what was going on, but I didn't get that from any of the movies, so I can't blame the actor from that. He was what he was.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I mentioned her briefly, but Haley Bennett's performance rang true to me as Lindsay, even though we didn't get to see very much of Lindsay in the sense of what her sacrifices were for JD. When she was on screen, she she was arresting, and she was very believable to me. I felt that she pulled more into that character than was there, and maybe understood a little bit more of the subject matter. I don't know her background, but it seemed like she was much more light-handed or sympathetic or empathetic to what she was playing, and had a more of a grasp as to the bigger picture than any of the other actors.
Yeah. I kind of also found it weird that you would hire Frida Pinto for this movie and then just like show her twice, and that's it. Like what, one or two, three times?
Yeah, it was. I read a review that was something like she literally called in her performance because you only ever see her on the phone, which isn't quite true. It isn't quite true. She is in a couple scenes where she's not on the phone, but it made me laugh because I was like, yeah, she's pretty much just the girlfriend on the phone.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because, again, Frida Pinto is right up there in terms of actresses.
Yes, she is.
And
yes, she is.
And this is a very minor character. And if it were because, J.D. Vance was dating an Indian girl, you could have gotten any actress that needed to be in this movie. You know what I mean? Like any lesser known actress that would have benefited more from being in this movie than Frida Pinto, because I just felt like it was, let's pay all this movie to Frida Pinto because we need an Indian female character. And Frida Pinto is more than that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, this is the one movie that I have no problem being completely against. Like, we've trashed movies before here. We've trashed series here before. But we've always had a couple of positive things to say. I struggled while watching the movie to find something positive to say about it. And I'm still struggling now that we're recording this podcast, trying to find something to say, positive to say about it.
The only thing that I can say is that maybe it will open up a dialogue or a discord between people who, like myself, have some insight into what it actually is to be poor, and people who don't. And I hope that my only concern about that is I feel that people with my background don't necessarily want to talk about it. But if you're listening to this and you do have that background, I think that it is something that we need to talk about, because this is what, if you watch this movie, if you're from a poor background and you watch this movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I hope that it will open up some level of passion in you, that if somebody next to you starts talking about what a great movie it is, you can go, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a great movie. Yeah. And if you want to know more about the actual poor experience in white America, here's something else you can watch, or here's something else you can read. If you're not going to watch the movie, I really recommend Allison Stein's review of this movie for Salon. It's available online. It's not behind a paywall. It opens up so many and unpacks so many things that are about this movie that I'm struggling to say without just straight up plagiarizing her. But just it's that's the only good thing the only thing I could say good that might come out of this movie is maybe it will open some discord, but I'm very much afraid that it's going to do the opposite, and it's going to just push the stereotype, just reinforce in people's minds, the people who live in the bubble of middle class and rich, that this is the way it is. And all you need to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're poor because you're lazy.
Unfortunately, movies have the power to do that because, again, certain things only have become normalized. Certain good things only have become normalized because we were able to see them on TV.
Yes.
Somebody said that, if 24 didn't get the U.S. Didn't normalize seeing a black president, probably it would have taken a few more years before we could get ourselves a black president. If Will and Grace wasn't there, if your Modern Family wasn't there, same-sex relationships wouldn't have been normalized enough for us to have equality in marriage that we have today. I'm not saying that's all we needed. What I'm saying is that Hollywood has the power to normalize certain things that could be good for society in the long run.
Yes.
And much in that same way, in that same manner, Hollywood has the power to normalize certain bigotry, certain stereotypes. And we know that because in one way or another, all of us, if you're poor, if you are a person of color, we have gone through some shit. We have had some awkward conversations. We have had some awkward situations. We have had to answer some weird-ass questions from people based on shit they've seen on TV.
Yes. Yes.
With that said, again, it is up to you to watch this movie. It's on Netflix. If you have Netflix, of course, why not? I think it's 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Yes.
Is it 2 hours and 50 minutes? So it is almost 3 hours, and it might well be a supreme waste of time, but let's let you be the judge of that.
Yes.
We of course want to thank you for watching and for listening. If you are watching us on YouTube, please go ahead, as Jocelyn said, smash that subscribe button. And you can also follow us on all platforms, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Kicking and Streaming Podcast is all you need to search. And of course, on the YouTube description, we have all of our links also down below. You can follow Jocelyn on Instagram, which is the only social media she does, as
Jocelyn Podcast.
And as for me, you will find me on Instagram, Twitter, as Mr. Puzzetta. That is MrPuzzetta, MrPuzzetta. So, Jojo, what else do we tell people?
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening to Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast. If you found value in our content, please subscribe and share. We would also be delighted to hear what you think of this podcast. So please rate us by writing a quick review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on all major social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Join the conversation happening today on our Facebook group.